Hello, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Joining me now is the one and only David Morassutti. David, welcome to the CFL Talk Show.
CFL?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. No, I'm good. Actually, CFL it's the legal tampering period.
Yes, the 48 hours, is it?
48 hours, yeah.
Yeah, 48 hours where you can sign a player who's not signed by the team that owned his rights previously.
Yeah, basically I consider it almost like a mini restricted free agency period where it's like you put in a formal offer, the other team now, okay, they see that an offer is out there, they can choose whether they want to give the guy an offer or just let him go. So
Mhm.
we've seen a lot of movement already. Because some guys were released beforehand. CFL free agency is just so much different than a lot of other ones.
Oh, absolutely. It's not really, I don't even know how to uh, free agency is basically you're a free agent. You can sign anywhere, and the team that owns your rights gives it up, and that's all you got left. It's just to me, it's not like other sports because, quite frankly, even when you sign, you're a free agent. You can be made a free agent on a moment's notice. So I guess that's the hair I'm trying to split here. I don't know what free agency in the Canadian Football League really is, because basically you're always a free agent. You're a free agent when you don't think you're a free agent.
No, it's yeah. That's why some players have fought for some sort of guarantees for contracts versus other players who said that right now it's not a good idea to do these long term deals because of the way that the league is working right now.
Yeah, we had Trevor Harris on our show on Friday, and he said, "Yep, he agrees with the article that Zach Caleros was a part of when Zach said that I think a 1 year contract's better for everybody. There's no money being held out, I think, is the reason, right? You get your bonus right up front, you get signed a 1 year contract, then there
Yeah,
that's the closest to a commitment you're going to get to your contract.
yeah, because if a team gives you that money up front, they're less inclined to release you because that money counts against the cap. Like that's
Exactly.
so it's teams put themselves in very tough positions when they give out any signing bonuses like that.
Yeah, and as we talked last week, they're losing a lot of players aren't getting the bonuses that are less taxable, and so therefore, they're literally earning less money for the same amount of money they're being given by virtue of the way the tax system works.
Yeah, especially for the American players, where they lose a good chunk of their salary on taxes, but if they get a good amount of it through bonuses versus actual salary, because it's important distinction. We saw it. It's funny because we saw the movement a bit in hockey when the Leafs were doing it,
Mhm.
and we're seeing it. I think the CFL, that's something that the American players want to use a little bit more, but aren't going to get that right now because it doesn't benefit CFL teams to be handing out signing bonuses, which are basically guaranteed. Once you give it out, you can't have it back.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, some we had a free agent signed. McLeod Bethel Thompson was signed by the Toronto Argonauts. We enjoyed talking about the Argos because we spend most of our time in their press box. So um, they've signed him, and I can't believe that he didn't get a decent payday, which probably means for him to really have some tough competition in camp might be difficult.
I also just think that he's done well for them, but he still hasn't reached that next tier, right? You're paying for what he's done to this point, not what I think you're trying to avoid paying for what you think he's going to do rather than what he's done.
Or I guess another way you can put it, David, that the team thinks the best that he's got to do, that he's going to get there. You know, he's been knocking on the door. He's knocked on the front door, he's knocked on the back door, he's knocked on the side door. He just hasn't figured out how to get inside just yet. He hasn't had that moment, the moment when, success is what it is. It's a playoff victory, right? He hasn't had one of those yet. Needless to say, having said that, he hasn't had a Grey Cup championship either. What he's mostly had. Oh, I see Danny's joined us. Hi, Danny.
Oh,
How
that's
you doing, buddy?
fine.
Oh, it's Devon. Oh, shoot. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't even see him. Devon, welcome to the show.
Come on, Frank, clean those glasses now.
I do have to, man, because you know what it is. I've been having my hat on sideways too long, and I think it's rubbed up against my glasses.
Yeah, the only reason I would have the hat on is to cover up that. As you can see, it's fading fast. David can relate for sure.
See, I actually wasn't looking at your face. I saw the side of the screen. That's all I saw, because I have some. Never mind. No excuses. A silly mistake on my part. Well, in case you folks out there don't know who Devon Claybrooks is, he was the defensive coach of the Calgary Stampeders that won the Grey Cup. Went on to the British Columbia Lions to be the head coach there. Things didn't really work out the way you would hope. You had a how can I put this? I think you had a really good long-term plan, but unfortunately it had short-term existence, right? I mean, is that a fair way to describe what happened?
Well, that's kind of how it happens with professional sports and being in the profession that we had chose. So you just kind of roll with the punches, and as long as your name's on the back of the check, the guy that signs the front of the check is in control.
Absolutely. So tell me, what have you been doing since you've been out of the league?
Just enjoying life. Can't really complain too much. Dabbling in a little bit of real estate, restaurants, different things like that. Just keeping busy. Still doing some volunteering and mentoring and things like that, or trying to give back type of thing.
I heard there's a pretty good restaurant in Calgary that you might have something to do with.
Yeah, it's called The Porch. It's on 17th. It gives you that Mediterranean vibe with an LA twist. So, Napa Valley, trying to feel like the indoor outdoor dining experience. So that's kind of what we're trying to do.
I think the outdoor dining part might be a little bit tough right now.
Well, actually, you'd be surprised of your numbers. Your overall numbers might be down, but you have a consistent flow because everybody is still trying to do something. And and with the mandates and things in place, you feel like it's a safer environment for you to go out nowadays as opposed to a year ago. So you try to minimize the risk and make sure everybody feels like they're a safe environment. That's why you do the mandates and you do those type of things and have a great dining experience. And so far, so good.
Yeah, it's I don't know whether it's how you would define, the restrictions is for a business like yours that's basically trying to get off the ground. I'm sure that makes it, I don't know. I'm kind of wondering whether it is a bad thing or it's something because you're trying to get off the ground, you sort of are moving in a direction. If you understand what I'm trying to ask here?
Yeah, for sure. I think it makes more to the perspective of you have the partnership, the ownership group that we're involved in, that they have extensive restaurant experience as I do myself. So we kind of had a game plan going in with pre-COVID because you're open during COVID. So you have a map that if it changes now, great. If it doesn't, we're ready and we have it how we want it to be set up as well at that point in time. So you try to, you hope for the best and you prepare for the worst. And we've been able to do that, and it's been going well.
Okay, give us an idea of what a signature meal from your perspective would be at your restaurant.
Well, I would try the warm olives. I think that's a good start, a good icebreaker. Then we would go into the chicken wings. It's actually a chicken wings and a fish sauce, maybe a nice beef tartare. And then we have a great drink called the Smoke Old Fashioned. That's a great drink to bring it to the table, all smoky and things like that. So it's a great showpiece. We have our insignia on the ice cubes. So it's it's a great effect, and it's an oval shape just like our logo. So things are, and that's a great starting point there. And then for a main, I would probably go with my go-to as a burger, nice porch burger with some bacon. We got a nice roasted chicken as well. So I mean, there's things for everyone. We got some good falafel. We have some great salads. So I didn't know this was going to turn into a spot.
No, 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 no. Well, when we talked, when we first talked to you, and I mean, the last time I actually saw you was at the Grey Cup. I think it must have been. I'm thinking it was 17.
Yeah.
I think it was 2017. We were sitting there by a food food area. I'm just wondering now, maybe it wasn't an accident because that's where, if you remember, that's where we're standing beside the counter.
For sure. Yeah. But you don't get to be this stature and don't enjoy to partake in a great meal every now and then.
You don't want to admit you were scouting. That's what it really is.
Yes, I'm always down to steal ideas.
Yeah, it's really good to see you. You know, you're one of my favorite. For somebody I don't know that well, you've always been one of my favorite people. You have a personality that is unique, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. I'm not even saying it to try and make it sound positive, but you're unique, and your kind of attitude is something that I can see helps to become a champion. You're very easygoing, but I can imagine you're not somebody I'd want to run afoul of on the field.
Well, you kind of, it's especially in professional football when you're in that business and you've been on both sides, and I was fortunate enough to play for the umpteen years, and as well as coach, you understand, when you're in the locker room, you understand what players connect with, and a lot of those players come from similar backgrounds as myself. So just that relatability, I think, is very imperative. Ooh, they let anybody in here now, huh?
Yeah,
What's
they
up,
let
buddy?
anybody in. Now, again, I couldn't tell it was Danny because I don't see him. I just see the corner of the screen. I've got a bit of an issue with my computer. Danny, welcome to the program.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. It's good to see Devon. I've been meaning to stop by Porch for a little while now. So,
well, we were just talking about it, Danny. We were just talking about it, and this is all coincidence. You know, it was funny. It's ironic, as you both know. I was talking to Devon about getting him on, and David said, "I'm gonna see if I can find somebody," and he was talking to Danny, and I called him. I said, "Hey, guess what? I think I got Devon for the next show." He goes, "Oh, I've got Danny Austin for the next show." And then Devon says, "Do you two need to be on? I mean, Danny and I can do it by." No, you're just kidding.
Well, Devon's a bigger catch than me, that's for sure. But
I think you both are, Danny. I think you guys both are. We were just talking about his restaurant. I asked him about his signature meal. What, in your mind, can you? It sounds like you've been there.
no, I was saying I have to go there.
Okay.
My girlfriend loves it, so it's like at some point I'm hoping we go. I walk past it all the time, but
so let me make sure I'm hearing this correctly. You walk past it all the time, and you've never stepped in for a drink. That's cool. I'm glad I know I'm not worth $7.50, but at least we got understanding.
It's a nice place. I'm not that fancy a man. I gotta dress up. It's gotta be a plan to go to your spot, man.
Yeah, right. You're so goofy, guy.
Well, we want the people out there to know that we didn't plan this. This is your life. So we talked about the restaurant. I guess real quick, just tell Danny. I asked you about the signature real quick. Help me out if I'm wrong. So you start out with.
Well, we do have some good chips. They actually like the fried potato chips, and they come out with a great dipping sauce as well. I think I went over the beef tartare.
Yep.
We have some good dishes. We got a lamb shank, a burger. I mean, just to name a few. We got and then the drink. It's an extensive drink list. It's got something for everybody's palate. And we even got some beers for you. And then we got our own special lemonade called the Porch Lemonade. And then we actually having a gin version that's coming out in the spring as well. So it should be a great spring coming up.
All right. Now that we've got the two of you here, Danny, you write for the Calgary Sun. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your you're one of those people that supports the Canadian Football League really well. It's not. I mean, the West for overall, you guys do a much better job than we do out here in the East as far as media is concerned. But tell us a little bit about the Calgary Stampeders and your love of the game of football.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Toronto, so I was an Argos guy growing up, and then middle of the season in 2016, which, as Devon knows, the Stamps were really good in 2016. A reporter named Scott Mitchell, who is a legend in this game, did such a good job. He left, and I was given 1 day's notice that I was taken over. Did not know what I was doing. It was a disaster for those first couple months, if I'm being honest with you. The Stamps kept winning every game, but I would write about how they would get outscored in the third quarter. And then finally, Dave Dickinson pulled me aside, and he was like, "We're getting outscored in the third quarter because we're up by 20 every game, man." Like, but yeah, I don't know. And then I'd like to think I got the hang of it. Was super fortunate to cover a team sort of 2017, 2018. It was kind of hard to write anything bad about them because they were so good. And since then, it's kind of taken off from there. But yeah, I mean, I ultimately didn't know I was going to fall in love with covering it the way I have. I've covered NHL. I'd way rather do football any day of the week. The athletes are just so much more engaging. So much more giving and sort of understanding of what the reporter's job is. So yeah, I mean, I feel really fortunate, honestly.
Well, you are fortunate, and both David and I are very fortunate as well. We get the chance to be respected by the Canadian Football League. We've been to the Grey Cup, saw you at the Grey Cup. The beauty of the Grey Cup this year was a little faint, a little less. There was a little less shine because of the situation, but I was kind of pleasantly surprised the way it went.
Yeah, that Grey Cup went great this year, to be honest. They dodged a bullet because 3 days later, Omicron was everywhere, and I don't know if we would have been able to have capacity, but honestly, having the hometown, I think Hamilton's the most underrated city in this country. I love it there. So if you're like me and you maybe enjoy the social part of the Grey Cup as much as you enjoy the work, it was there were some late nights. It was a good time. But yeah, no, I honestly I think it's hard, man. We all get wrapped up in all the negative. The fact is, man, it was hard. I've talked to some of these players. It was not easy this year having to go through all those protocols to get through. We saw what happened with all the other sports kind of in late December. Yeah, there was a little bit of luck involved, but they got through with only Edmonton canceling games, and that's Edmonton. So I think it was a huge success, and honestly, the Grey Cup, it felt normal to me.
Hamilton did a great job. Even though I don't know, Devon, to what extent you've gone through the ritual of being tested. I was never tested till I got to the Grey Cup. It was the first time I got tested. Good news for me was the swab was only that big. It wasn't one of those swabs. So, I was kind of happy about that because I didn't feel the back of my head being tested.
I got in trouble because Don Jackson, who I hadn't seen since 2019.
Oh, no.
He saw me, came up and gave me a hug, and I didn't know that it was not allowed. Yeah, so I got reamed on by. I mean, they were fine about it; they were cool, but it was the COVID protocols were crazy.
I did the same thing with Zach Calero. Zach saw me. I wasn't going near him. Zach was coming over. He goes, "How you doing?" Right? He went to give me a hug, right? And I changed it to a handshake, and we're 4 or 5 CFL executives around. They grabbed my hand and they pulled it away from me, and I went, "Oh my God!" But other than that, it went rather smoothly. When it comes to Grey Cups, this was. You talked about party. There were parties. It was a celebration, but it really was tamped down a little bit. Devon, if I can bring you into it as far as Grey Cups are concerned, I don't know. Did you go to this one in Hamilton? I'm assuming.
Oh no. That was too much trouble for me, and it's way too cold. I'm not going to voluntarily go into that normal of a temperature. I don't think that would be very, very high on my IQ meter for sure.
Which Grey Cup were you at last? The one I saw you at 17?
18.
You were there at 18?
The one that they won.
Yeah.
He was DC.
Yeah, the one that you won. Oh.
First thing to go, Frank, is the memory.
It's for me, it's taken a while because it's never mind. I'm a lot older than I look. And then add a couple of years. There's what I meant to say was anyway, I want to know the experience you had not as a player. I
Well,
missed my point.
it's a totally different
Or a
animal.
coach.
I mean, because I was fortunate to go in Montreal and in Calgary as a player, and then I was fortunate to go as a position coach and as a coordinator. So I've actually saw it from 4 different facets there. As a coach, is just totally different because you you don't have the responsibility of the player, but you do because and nowadays with perception is reality. If you're out in the streets or you're out at the Stamps house and for an extended period of time, and then you go out there and lay a goose egg on the game, it definitely be on the chat sites. So I think that it's a balancing act because you want to experience it and you haven't been able to, you haven't a lot of people don't get an opportunity to win Grey Cups. I mean, some organizations only won 2 or 3 in their whole existence, let alone like the chance to go to as many as we did in that extended period of time. So by seeing it from a coach's perspective, it's just more of you really just hoping and praying that you don't get that phone call at 2 a.m. that a player has done something stupid. I think that is you're really unrest until you get to the game because you're probably dealing with your family trying to get there because it's a unique experience in that and you want to share with them, but you're also dealing with the players and their many fires. They don't say when you become to try to become a successful coach that you had to be a father, financial advisor, friend, mentor, and all wear a multitude of hats. And that don't just cut off when you go to the Grey Cup. It actually gets even worse because now you got to try to help this guy get 2 tickets from a rookie who doesn't have 3 people coming, but a vet has 18 people coming. Now they're trying to get off. So you really, it really does require, and let alone you want to try to win the game. So, it's a balancing act between the players, the coaches, and then your family and trying to balance those type of things. But I think that one thing that CFL does do a great job on, and as seeing as many Grey Cups and being to as many Grey Cups as I have, they do a great job of putting on the show. I mean, it is Danny and I do partake in a beverage or two, so we do know that they do extend the life of the party. And I think that each individual team as well does a unique job and put their own unique spin on it at the Grey Cup with each place having like Riderville and that type of thing and, the Spirit of Edmonton. So different things like that each team brings to the table, even though, and that's what makes this league so great and unique is where you see Rider fans all the time, but you see so many fans from all over the country supporting their teams, and they've had these traditions that, my grandfather's grandfather took me to my first Grey Cup type of thing where they've been going for years and passed it down from generation to generation. So I think that it's Grey Cup is a great experience, and the NFL could learn a couple things from pointers from just the experience. I mean, I think that they just have an enormous budget. So with that enormous budget doesn't mean it's a great show. And I think what the CFL does is they maximize that and able to put on a great show.
Yeah, and the final thing is, I guess the point I was getting at is your interaction with with the fans. You touched on that, Danny. As a reporter, you get to be I don't want to say a fan, but you get to, like you said, you get to imbibe, or you get to enjoy what's going on around the game. What makes the CFL, in my mind, and I think as a reporter, you've probably seen it. I know I've seen it as well. Is that the fans get really involved, but they get involved with the love of the game, not the individual team. Not to suggest that the Hamilton fans aren't there to root for the Hamilton team, or the Winnipeg fans aren't there to root for the Winnipeg team, but the rest of the fans are enjoying the experience of the Grey Cup. And I think that's what Devon's leading up to.
But yeah, and everybody's welcome. I mean, Devon's been to Super Bowls. I haven't, so I can't compare. But I mean, as far as I know, that each team throwing a party where everyone's welcome. I mean, that's unique to the CFL. That's unique to the Grey Cup. And I do think that it puts the fans front and center. And the fans are still the biggest asset this league has in a lot of ways. So, yeah, no, I 100% think that's what's special. I mean, it's why, I'm not on TV, so nobody knows what I look like. So I can go to the Rider party and they don't give me too hard a time. But, yeah, I honestly, it's why all of us in the media just kind of want to be at Grey Cup regardless because, where else do you get that? I've never heard of that happening at any other sporting event ever, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
And again, I think it's why those of us who defend and love the league defend and love it, because
Yep.
I think that is unique, and it's a little bit more homegrown and a little bit more connected. And I think that's always when people talk about what this league needs to do, it's fostering that, really.
David?
Well, yeah, no, and I think that's especially important. I was a little concerned that this Grey Cup might have lost a bit of that charm, because this was my first Grey Cup ever. I'd never been to one, even though I grew up in Toronto. I never even went to the ones in Toronto, but I always heard that the what the atmosphere was like. I thought, with the restriction and protocols, I'm seeing like, is this going to be like the same sort of feel, the same atmosphere? And talking to some of the fans and now hearing you, it sounds like they were able to pull that off, and I think that's probably the greatest triumph that the CFL had. And
that a big part of that has to, like, the credit for that goes to the Hamilton fans, because a lot of the parties were thrown by, like, there wasn't a Stamps house or anything. And like, I shouldn't joke, but like, I have no idea how I didn't get COVID. Like, honestly,
We were a 3-day, like you said, Danny, you couldn't have been more accurate. It was a matter of days. If that Grey Cup had been arranged to be at the regular date.
I got back to Calgary on the Tuesday, and like 25 players got COVID on the Tuesday. Yeah, and I'd just been there drinking with no mask in parties with like 300-400 people at a time. Like, I do not know how I didn't get COVID. It's crazy.
You might be super vaxxed.
I am super vaxxed.
Super immune.
The thing is, I know I didn't get it because I got sick and my girlfriend got sick, and she gave whatever she gave, whatever we had, to her parents. And then last week, her parents got COVID. So we know we didn't have COVID no matter what, because they got it a month later. So
I don't think there's any medical journal, I can tell you that.
Yeah, we're all getting by day. We do what we can.
David might tell you about the experience. No, it was Eduardo that was with me at the time. I game day, I went in, they changed where we got to get tested at game day, right? You have to go to the other complete side of the stadium to get that test to go in game day. And so you have to get tested to get in the stadium.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Gistic.
I don't know if I did that.
No? Well, you're lucky that you made it through. I don't know how you did it. You know what? I think maybe if you went to practice, you would have had the band that you needed if you'd gone to the practice that day.
Or you would have had I think if you went to the convention center in the morning and you got tested there, you didn't have to get tested at the stadium.
But you probably had the band. Let's assume they did their job right, Danny, and you followed the rules. Okay, can we go there?
Yeah.
I don't want to call from the commissioner telling me, what are you guys doing? No, just kidding. No. So what happened was I stood in line to get tested. I got tested, and the nice young lady goes, sir, can you please come with me? She grabbed me by the arm. She pulled me away from everybody else. She was pulling me outside the door. She says, we think you've tested positive for COVID. And I went, what? The guy that I've been driving around with in his car said, he doesn't have it. I have it. Well, what happened was I didn't realize, because I was so shocked. One of them was handing out the stuff, right? And the other one was looking at the test. Well, they didn't give it the 5 to 10 minutes of sitting in the liquid for the, for the test to become valid, if you follow what I'm saying. So it didn't get a chance to turn darker, right? So they thought I had it. So I took another test. I didn't have it. The point is that it was a bit of an inconvenience, but when you consider looking back, Danny, you make the perfect point that if it wasn't for a few days, it would have been really tragic, for the Grey Cup. It was a great experience. Now, the game itself, the game day experience, as a coach, Devon, I know you talked about, trying to maintain a distance from having fun to ensure that you maintained your appearance of being responsible and able to do your job. Tell us about the experience being at the game and going to this city and hearing all the noise. You talked about the different types of fans that were there, but the experience of being in a Grey Cup and this kind of, obviously you've been in a lot of them. So how was it for you?
Well, I think it's you just replay it over in your head, your first 15, your game plan. I mean, if you think back, I remember we played Ottawa. before I was knocking on the door, before I could blink, we were down in Toronto, I think, and
Yeah,
I think
BMO.
we were able to fight back and to go to overtime, and we still lost. But I remember I was like, I was looking at this call sheet, and it's so funny because when you watch football coaches on television, and your call sheet has two sides. So when when somebody's looking for something, when he flips that thing over a few times, he don't have the answer. He's in there trying to figure that out with the coaching staff. But kudos to the staff. We was able to rally, and we still came up short in overtime. But just the mentality as a coach when you get involved in it from the perspective of it is just you're just trying to keep your kids even killed because they're like, I mean, honestly, I don't go out there and make tackles. You have to play vicariously through your kids, and if you don't put them in the situation, they save you more times than not. That's the craziest part. I mean, most of the time all you see is a player miss a tackle, and you're like, oh, he should have made that tackle. Then all of a sudden you see a player make a great tackle. Lo and behold, he should have been the high player, and he just rallied down and was a ball player and made the play and saved the touchdown or saved the play. I mean, and it's all credit to the players for sure, because if they don't believe in your system, they're not going to execute it. And if you can get a good group of guys, which I've been fortunate and blessed everywhere I've been, the guys that believe and trust in you as a person, the coach, and your objective as a coach is to make them better players and to take them where they can't go by themselves. But at the end of the day, it revolves around one thing and one thing only, and that's money. And if you can make a player better and get them money, they're going to respect you. And the only way you can make them better, they get money. So they kind of go hand in hand, right? So that's when you get a player's respect, when you can teach him something that the objective as a coach is to get every one of the players to play for 13, 14 years and give them the tools. Like Father Time hasn't lost any battles. You can get slower, you're going to get weaker and those type of things. But your technique and the little nuances and those things, that's why those old heads say the game slowed down, because they understand those nuances and those type of things where they don't have to exert that much energy or have to be as fast as they were back in the day.
Absolutely. Danny, you and I both know, and David too. There's a mantra with all the interviews. When you talk to the players and the coaches, they all say almost the same thing. Everybody says the same thing. It's like, they've got a written script. Can you discern anything from the way they say stuff that you can sort of get an idea how the game's going to go as a reporter?
Yeah, I don't know that I fully have that problem in Calgary. Like, I know that they're not going to actually tell me what's, anything strategic or what have you. But like, honestly, like there's one or two guys in my 5 years covering the team. I'm not going to say who they are, who I've genuinely not liked. And typically that's because they get mad at me for something that was said on TSN. So, I honestly, I think, look, I think that in general, if you're asking X's and O's, players are smart enough not to say anything, which is why I generally, in part because I'm not a football coach, so I don't pretend that I'm an expert on that stuff. But, you try to get to know these people. And ultimately, the nice thing about doing this job for a number of years is some of the players get to know you. And, I can now rely on a guy like Jameer Thurman to tell a rookie who I'm interviewing for the first time. Hopefully he'll be like, yeah, Danny's a good guy. You don't have to worry about him screwing you. And that's kind of the key to the whole job, I think, really, is gaining a little bit of trust and not violating that trust. And yeah, I think that, look, the challenge is always trying to be interesting, but let me tell you, it's a lot easier with CFL guys than it is with hockey players. I can promise you that.
I don't doubt that. David, you've had a chance to interview hockey players, if I can segue that, for the NHLPA, and you now had a chance to go to a Grey Cup and be involved in interviewing players and teams about the biggest game they have of the season. What were some of your? Just give us an idea of what it was like for you the first time.
Well, and coaches too, right? Because we generally don't get a chance to talk to all the coaches during the season, right? So I find it's great when all the coaches are out there, and I'm sure the coaches maybe some like it, some don't. I know Devon probably. I'm sure you enjoy it. Again, to talk to us if we ask good questions.
Devon was always good. You were always good.
Danny wants to make sure he knows that you're one of the good ones, not one of the ones that were giving him the problems. But
it's a rule number one in media: say a lot and say nothing, but keep it interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, if you know a little bit about our sport, like I mean, if a team's giving up, teams last in the league in rushing, well, what are you going to do for your game plan? We're going to run the ball. Duh. Like I mean, it doesn't take a genius to if you follow the sport, an inkling, you can have an idea from a game plan. I mean, it's so crazy because as I talk to kids in high schools and things like that, they always want to know how complicated is the playbook. And I'm like, actually, the playbook's probably the same as your junior high playbook. It just sounds very extravagant, but I mean, Mac Blitz is still the Mac, no matter what level you're at, right? So different things like that for sure.
Devon, I think what you're telling me is that we're really not interviewing. Well, first I'll tell you my experience. That when I started doing this about 10 years ago, the Argos used to say, okay, Frank, you can hold your microphone, but don't ask any questions. I said, okay. He tapped me on the shoulder. The next time I'd go, you can hold up your microphone, but don't ask any questions. A year goes by. They go, okay, you can ask one question. All right, so you ask one question. The point I'm trying to make here is that, it's not really what you ask. Honestly, it isn't what you ask, it's how you ask. And a lot of times as reporters and watching this kind of stuff, what makes Danny a good reporter, what makes, David a good reporter and me a fairly good one, is the way we ask the questions, and it's very important. And sometimes I find that the players are so good in the Canadian Football League, I think I found myself asking questions that maybe I shouldn't have asked. I've tried to ask him in a nice way. I was talking to Brandon Banks about his emotional issues that he's had. And I've asked him from the hero aspect, because anytime a player runs into something, right? And it's something that I want people to know that they're normal and that they're just like people, right? And they can get through it too. They have challenges and they can get through it too. I didn't realize how stupid a question I was asking that I could have really, the trap door might have opened up on me and I might have had my my ability to ask questions revoked. Have you ever had a question that you go, you really don't need to ask that question? And how do you handle that, Devon? You don't have to be specific, but sometimes we reporters, we ask questions that maybe we shouldn't ask.
Well, I mean, you try to look at it from an analytical standpoint of knowing that as a reporter you have a job to do. So you try to think about it from that perspective, and your job is to bring interest to your paper or your blog or whatever, your podcast and that type of thing. But I think what the rhetorical question is when you go out here and you get a spanking, and then the first question is, now you've seen we've given up a 180 yards rushing, and that's right there on the top of the stat line. And the first thing you say is, Devon, what happened today? What do you think? They ran up and down the field like they were doing a halftime show. So, like, I mean, some things are like that are kind of like questionable, but you also want the answer from the coach's perspective of why you lost. So when you look at it from both sides of the spectrum, you kind of understand and get it.
David, where does your question come from when you ask your questions?
Oh, yeah, and you know what? I always have to think about the question too, right? And do I understand what I'm asking? That's the first and foremost, right? And it's also, you're trying to create a story, right? You're trying to create a storyline, and I always want to make sure it's a fair and balanced, take, right? I'm not, if I have some sort of I also kind of look at it as a fan as well too. In some cases, like fans always are asking, certain questions. I'm like, well, as a media member, I have the access to ask the players and the coaches sort of questions that the fans have. I'm not going to ask it like a fan because some fans will be a little more direct about it. So you kind of have to like approach it in a way that the coaches are going to want to answer to provide, a logical answer or an explanation that you think is going to be good enough to use. Because I've done as well as I can to not have players kind of look back at me and be like, sorry, what were you asking again? Like, just totally dumbfounded with what I'm asking. But I'll give the CFL players credit because even during tough times, like that Argos East final, that was one of the tougher press conferences I've ever had to do because they were just so distraught. Like, those are probably the toughest ones because you don't want to ask anything that's going to set someone off. And especially when they're only giving short answers because they just don't really like. They know they have to be there, but they don't really want to be there. And so that's I think the balance, right? You have to kind of think about what the players think they're going through, the emotions, and what they just went through, but also in the fact that you got a story to write. You know, fans are going to be wanting to know what the heck happened, either good or bad, and you got to deliver that message. So that's usually how I try to approach it.
Danny, one of the worst compound words in the English language, deadline.
They don't stress me out. They don't. No. Honestly, I mean, the things that stress me out are related to it's stuff sort of that both these guys have said, but like, honestly, like as a reporter, I think you got to know that the coaches know more about football than you. So, like, I honestly think that's the most important thing to do. Like, when we start breaking down certain decisions, like, I think Mike O'Shea said it pretty well after the Grey Cup. He's like, the reporters only see the outcome. We don't think about the, all the other. I'm not necessarily saying that I agree with taking a knee in the end zone at the end there, but, so I honestly, like, when it comes to deadlines, I'm going to hit it one way or another. I'm not even trying to be cocky. Like, that's the reality. But, like, trust me, and, I don't mean to, pick at old scabs, but, like, trust me, the 2017, the locker room after the 2017 Grey Cup, I'll never have to deal with anything that, like, that I could, you're feeling, these guys. For me, it's not
Absolutely.
about, it's not asking the wrong question. It's just understanding these guys who have been good to me are dealing with hurt, are dealing with disappointment, are dealing with some anger. I got to go in and I got to be like, oh, I'm the guy who's going to make you talk about this when all you want to do is just not talk. And that's the part that's tough. But the deadline, I don't know. Like,
well, some writers take it a little more personally. I've been in the press box, Danny. Some people really lose it when the deadline's coming down. It's some guys really do have a tight deadline, and that's probably more what I'm talking about. But yeah, you're right. But that's also something that we're all in this game of the Canadian Football League, right? And we're all here trying to show a side of the Canadian Football League that I think most of us are trying to be positive. We don't want to be negative. Now, that goes without saying the fact that there are some people who think my name improves the harder I am. I've seen those as well. Personally, I'm the type of guy that asks questions that I'm more of an emotion-based asker of questions. I like to ensure that the players in the situation you're talking about, Danny, because we had a whole year like that where every game after the game was a nightmare a couple of years ago. So, you learn to ask the questions in a way that you're trying to get an answer that you think the fan, from my perspective, I'm not speaking for anybody else, that the fans want to understand, that the people who are watching the game, that if they had the opportunity to ask a player or a coach the question, that's the question that I want to ask. Not the ones that you see on Facebook and Twitter that talk about Devon Brooks made a bad call, he should get canned. Right, Devon? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, but those are the impulse of the fans.
Yeah.
I mean, at least the thing about a reporter is that one would think, but this day and age with the internet, it's not to be qualified. It doesn't, like most of you guys work your way up. You started here with a mom and pop shop, and then you've grown into larger viewership and larger markets. And that was kind of the progression. But nowadays with the media and the internet, anything's a platform. So now it really accentuates the point of having everybody has a voice. So, and a fan's always going to think with their heart and not the head anyway. I mean, you think of certain situations and certain circumstances where fans defend players when they brutally know their players are wrong and get in these starch debates over different things. When if the player's at fault, the player's at fault. Like the players even owned it and accepted it in media and did a press release but the fans are still defending them till they're blue in the face on these chat sites and things like that. So I think that it evolves around you guys of knowing, like Danny said, like you guys don't act like you're the smartest for the most part. Now there are a few of you that think you're the smartest player in the room, and I think that if I put on the media hat, I would see it from a different perspective as well. But a lot of you guys understand that, like, our job is to report on the news. We aren't the news. We're more of a vessel the segue between your fans and the game. And if you understand that, and you understand that It's about how you disseminate the information and pass it along is more important than anything else.
We're at the point now in the season where free agency is an issue. David mentioned before both of you were on about the 48 hours that teams have an opportunity to sign a player that's on a team. That team that he's on can basically get pushed over the edge to sign the player. I want to know the four of us talk about free agency and what it means in the Canadian Football League. David, let's start with you with that. What does free agency mean to you, and how does that fit into the big picture of trying to win a Grey Cup?
Well, it's just I'm really looking at what teams are prioritizing right now, because it seems like the list is always lengthy. You're always going to see a bunch of free agents. I always like to see which positions do teams try to tackle early on. Who on their list of guys that are leaving are they trying to get back and not lose? And then how does that change their approach going into day one of free agent? See, because now they've had their chance to bring who they want back, but the guys that are leaving, who do they view as like the guys that they want to upgrade or replace in certain cases?
Zach Claros put out a report through Three Down Nation talking about players, Danny, are better off to do 1-year contracts. You've been around long enough to know that there's been a lot of change. Help us understand where you think free agency is for Canadian Football League players today.
And that's not happening in Calgary. I've never seen Calgary sign more guys for 2-year contracts than they have this year. Basically, their entire offensive line, Mike Rose, Derek Wigan on the D-line, Kadeem Carey today signed up for 2 years. So I don't know where Zach's coming from on that. He's an older quarterback. He's maximizing his value and doing it in 1 year. That makes a lot of sense. But I think the challenge is that you can get released whether you sign a 2-year contract or a 1-year contract or a 5-year contract. But I certainly think that we're seeing in Calgary at the very least. And I will say that Calgary, Hamilton, Winnipeg are the 3 teams that I'd be trying to emulate if I ran a team right now. And they're going for the 2 years contracts and for getting that stability in. And I think it counts. And honestly, in a sport where you can get injured, my opinion is, why wouldn't you sign a multi-year deal? But I also that's different if you're a team like Winnipeg, where they're obviously having to pay their guys big because they've won 2 in a row. So there may be more money available in a year than there is now. But I don't think that there's across the board. I just don't think that there's an answer to that that's right for everybody. And I certainly think that it's notable that John Hufnagel, who has built winners in Calgary unlike anyone else, I think the fact that he's turning towards 2-year contracts is significant, is something that people should be paying attention to. And I haven't talked to him about it. I don't know why he's doing it beyond the obvious. He's got a young team, keep them together for 2 years, have a run at this. But yeah.
Well, I think it's an emotional thing. I think it's a table they're trying to set for the players to understand that, that this is an organization that wants you, and not that signing 1-year contracts, Devon says teams don't want you. It's all about commitment. And really it comes down to money. It comes down to the money that's going to, exchange hands. It's tough being a player in the Canadian Football League because the money isn't yours until they actually hand it to you.
Well, it's twofold as free agency, and a lot of people tend to lose sight of it. As an American, it's a totally different animal than it is as a Canadian, and so that's what I mean. Why you have to really understand the magnitude of it, because as an American, your signing bonus is everything. It's only taxed 15%, so you're able to bring more home money, and then what that helps do is that help offset what you would lose during the course of the season with the exchange rate of USD to Canada, because over half your players are Americans and go home during the offseason. But the thing about the 1-year contracts is all about how your team's structured. So you have some teams that go out every year and get no-name wide receivers and just plug and play in that, and then they spend their money on a solidified offensive line and then the backfield. And but every team is going to always start. Every engine to every car is going to start up front on both sides of the ball. And the team that dominates those sides of the ball, you look at Winnipeg, and you could see 5 years ago what O'Shea was building when he signed Stanley, when he signed Hardrick, when he had Sook, and then you even knew what he had in the wings when he was able to make that transition and lose an all-star, but plugged and play and knew what they had in house. So what they did do a great job of is, and a lot of teams that, like Danny mentioned, those three teams are staple franchises that you would want to model after. You could see they build from two. They don't really go after free agency that much. They do their team with the draft, and they try to keep what they develop and what they bring in from in-house, because the higher the turnover, the harder the continuity is going to be, no matter if you're signing 1 year deals or not. And a lot of players, it depends on how they're bred and bred. Some players want that 2 year false sense of security that you get cut like Trevor Harris did, before his bonus was due. So it doesn't really matter how many years you sign. You're on a year-to-year contract. It just gives you a false sense of security in a sense. But at the same time, it's all about the money that they give you. Knowing that in the CFL, the money is what counts. It's all about your signing bonus, because you know that if they give you a $35,000 or $40,000 signing bonus, they're not going to get rid of you in the season, and you know that that's going to be your year. Now, how do you make that translate over, and things like that? That is yet to be seen.
David, pick up on that. We talked a little bit. We'll ask Danny too, but you first. That's the thing that's changed. The league has said, you know what? I think they said, you can't spend more than $500,000 in signing bonus. And that is a shot over the bow of the players, personally, financially.
Well, yeah, we've seen those reports, and I think, we've heard about the financial times that some teams are having. Not all teams, of course, but I always said that, signing bonuses really do tell, or even like the hard money that they're giving players, that really speaks. And I think Devon really did a good job of that, saying that really shows what a team's committing to a player is through that guarantee money. Like that's money you can't really take back. And teams have to think about that, those decisions they make when that money is up front and center. And I think that's something that, maybe the players need to fight for more if they really want to ensure a little more security for themselves. They get that money up front, or get some of that money, a little more of that money guaranteed, so that teams are really making those commitments and not living through those, year per year deals, even if it's a 2-year deal.
And it's really bad for the fans. I think the fans are the ones that are punished the most. I mean, especially with the jersey costing upwards of $100. I mean, nowadays your fans can't even get names and numbers on the jerseys because they don't know who's going to be there and who's going to. So I think that, and then you wonder why your attendance is these things kind of go hand in hand. It's almost like a hamster wheel. You can't get a solid foundation and base if you don't have the players. You can't develop that continuity if you don't have those type of players that come in and put the time in the community. Because actually the way you develop your fan base is going in with school visits, visiting schools, because that's the little 10-year-old kid that's going to come to his mom and say, I want to go to the Stamps game. I saw Coach Clay and we threw a football together and I told him I was going to come support him. And now and then they don't remember the sacks, and they couldn't remember Bo Levi threw for 5,000 yards or whatever, but they'll be like, I remember that school visit where you came in and you was talking about bullying and blah, 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 blah. And that's why I became a CFL fan. And that's how you grow your brand. And that's how the grassroots of how you catch this on and get it back to where you want it to be.
Well, that's a good way. Well, listen, we've only got a couple of minutes left. Danny, right away, NFL football. Some people have said they're playing CFL football. In fact, some CFL players on Twitter made that point. They talked about how the NFL has become more like the Canadian Football League. My concern is the Canadian Football League isn't like the Canadian Football League anymore. That seems to be one of my concerns. I don't know. Is there any justification to concern ourselves, or in your mind, you only got a minute or two? So can you solve the problem in a minute?
Nah, man. Let's give them a training camp. Let's give them preseason games. Let's give them not having their entire lives disrupted. Honestly, Devon would be better to speak to this. My understanding is athletes are creatures of habit. It's about doing it every day. It's about growth. They had their whole lives disrupted. They couldn't do that. Honestly, 2021, still the playoffs were great. It got better as the season went on. No, there's not a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes, but let's give them a year to fix it. I honestly have absolutely no worries about that. I still think it's a good game, and I think that anyone who forgets that they didn't have exhibition games, well, remember that when you look at the early season games and some of the bad
Well,
scores.
I'm glad you agree with David and I, because that's what we said when we had time to talk about it. And that really is, Devon, that is the real tough thing that the CFL has gone through. You know, the pandemic hurt the CFL more than it did any other league because it relies so much on American players to cross that border. And I hope people understand that does affect a player. And also, I think, Devon, you can speak to this too. They can't bring their family here either. So Danny's point, you're 100% right, Danny, but I want to add the fact that you don't even get you have to leave your family behind. I'm sure that doesn't help in your game playing.
Well, it doesn't really help at all. I think that it's imperative that and even as coaches, you have to think, like, even putting your time in your playbook, watching film, study. And if you look at it from perspective, defenses were better than offenses, scoring was down. So if you look at it from that perspective, the offensive coaches are definitely in the lab right now, and they definitely have more time devoted to their craft, and the scoring definitely will be up.
David, I guess we're looking at an aberration for this year until, like Danny says, he said it perfectly, until the league can prepare for games as they always did, as opposed to how they have. It should get better.
That's all I'm hoping for. And I think Danny put that perfectly, as usual.
Yeah, thank you. Danny, I really appreciate you coming on. It was really a pleasure to have you come on. It was always fun. It's always fun being there with you when we go to the games and to interview guys like Devon. Devon, it's always a pleasure to interview guys like you, and it's always a pleasure to be a part of part of a conversation, a personal one. You're very kind, and you're very generous with your time. I really appreciate it. And I'm not just talking about here. I'm talking around the fans. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. Thanks for that. And I know the fans appreciate it. David, it is always awesome.
Thank you very much.
Later, guys.
I got to go eat, so we'll talk to you guys later.
Bon appetit. Hey, there's a nice restaurant somewhere.
You guys have a good one, guys.
Yeah, you too. All right, for David Morassutti, Danny Austin, and Devon Claybrooks, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody.